Welcome to Nutrition 1 at Health Academy. My name's Sharon Adams and I'm one of the nutrition tutors here. This presentation has been created to help answer some of the questions that students commonly ask. So let's get started. When you log in to Health Academy into Nutrition 1, you'll see that there are 9 lessons that you need to read through and 9 assignments that you need to complete. These assignments need to be sent in to be marked by your tutor. There's also one problem-based learning project which is more extensive than the general assignments that you have for each lesson. A resources file is required by the end of the module, and there are also set tasks that you need to do for each lesson. We'll talk about those in a bit more detail shortly. When you're starting out, it's recommended that you submit 1 assignment per week. This is so that your tutor can give you feedback before you move on to the next one. Very important that you don't rush ahead and do too many assignments before having them checked by your tutor, because sometimes things are missed. Perhaps the assignment isn't set out the way we'd like it to be. These all need to be remedied very early on so that you can submit very good work. So always include a cover sheet as part of your assignment. I like it to be the first page of your assignment, so when we open up the document we can see exactly who it belongs to, who your tutor is, so who we need to direct it to, and which module you're studying at the time, so we can quickly go to the assignment paper or the lesson or whatever it might be in order to mark your paper better. There's some preferred formats you can see there that we like you to send your work in. It's easiest for us to mark in those formats, and always reference any work that you do. So any material that you're using from other authors needs to be acknowledged. Include a reference list and bibliography, very importantly, at the end of each assignment, but because we use a style called Harvard style referencing here, you'll also have references throughout your paper as well. Any diet plans that you submit need to be in table format. That makes it much easier to recognise days of the week and food that is consumed, for example. Your tutor will send you a resources list at the beginning of your course, and the resources list has different textbooks, other books and websites that we think are quite useful to help you answer your assignments correctly, and it's a good starting place for you to look for the information. So make sure you get one of these from your tutor. They should, if you haven't got it before you actually start submitting assignments, you'll probably get one with your first marked assignment. Check your local library and other resources around you for information. So you might have nutritionists in your area that you can talk to. You might have a local library. They have some really good anatomy and physiology textbooks usually, and other nutrition books as well. So that's a great place to start. It's also good, you can actually get quite cheap textbooks and used textbooks on the internet for not much money. If you're referring to websites, which seems to be a common theme for students that are doing this course, then you need to make sure they're reputable. So government websites are quite good ones to refer to because these are updated regularly, so they're a preferred choice of your tutors. There's other websites too that you need, if you might find some information that is quite different to anything that you've read so far, this needs to be backed up with further sources if you're not quite sure whether it's a reputable site or not. So try and find the information in a textbook or in a journal article, something like that, that you can back up the information. So let's firstly have a look at set tasks. These are outlined at the end of each lesson, so all the reading material that you get each week or however often you do a lesson, you'll find at the end of that there are set tasks to do. Now these aren't actually marked by your tutor, only sometimes when it's requested in an assignment question. So you might have a question that says report on your set task. So in those instances you do need to send in the set task information as part of your assignment. Some students like to send in set tasks if they're having a bit of trouble understanding the content, or they'd like extra feedback from their tutor. That's fine, but you don't need to send in every set task for us to mark. You've probably noticed too when you log in that there are self-tests listed under each lesson. Now these are just to help you learn the content of the lessons in more detail. Make sure that you're actually retaining the information and making sure that you understand it as well. We don't actually record your marks for any of the self-tests that you do, but they are a useful tool to make sure you understand the work. So going back over and reviewing those self-tests is a good idea, because that'll actually cement the information for you. If you're getting some wrong, that's a good idea to go back over your work again and redo the test. Try and aim for 100%, even though that's not always possible for all of us, but it just shows that you're really learning the content as well as you can. If you're not sure of any of the answers on the self-tests, then contact your tutor. Sometimes we can help you unravel the question so that you understand it better. And also realise that sometimes the answer is case sensitive, so it might need a capital letter, or perhaps you've typed in a capital, might need a lowercase letter in order for the system to recognise it. So just try a few different options before you contact your tutor. So where do you send your assignments? In this day and age, I like that photo there of the computer as a mailbox. We send everything electronically. That's the best way and the quickest way for us all. Now you'd probably think that you send your assignment straight to your tutor, but no, we don't do that. We send all assignments through admin. They keep a record of all your assignments that you do for your official transcript, and also to make sure that none of your work gets lost. They forward it on to your tutor, and then the tutor sends everything back through admin again, so that they can make sure that all your work has been marked and sent back to you. So the email address is here, admin@healthcourses.com.au, and all you need to do is attach the document to an email and send it to that address. Make sure you put your tutor's name in the subject line of the email, and that will help direct your work a little bit faster. Moving on to referencing. We use Harvard-style referencing here at Health Academy, which is the author-date style of referencing. Now, as I have mentioned, you can find more information about Harvard referencing on the internet. There's lots of different institutes that have manuals on how to reference Harvard style. You can also find a link from the Health Academy careers page, and this will take you to a document on Harvard style referencing. But most of what you need to know is in this presentation. So you need to include in-text referencing as well as a reference list at the end of your assignment, which has much more comprehensive information in it in order to find the source of your information. So when you're quoting exact words, you must put the author's name, the year, the title, the source, and the page numbers. Book names and journal names and titles must be in italics. That's very important also. So here's an example of a quote that's taken out of a book, exact words, and how to reference after that. So you can see that the author's name and date comes first, and then we have clinical decision making in complementary and alternative medicine in italics, and then the page number follows that. Or you can see a different way of using the author's name within that quote to change the style a little bit of the reference. I prefer students to paraphrase when they're writing their answers. This actually means that you've read the content of the information and you're basically putting it in your own words, so that that tells us whether or not you understand the concept that you've just read about. Here's an example here that you can read through in your own time and how to reference it in the reference list. Summarising is a little bit like paraphrasing, and you can read more about that as well. You can find this PowerPoint presentation separately to the video presentation in the Nutrition 1 section of the website. So you can download it and read it in your own time. Here's how to cite page numbers using just P for a single page and PP for multiple pages that you have read. And here's how to do a book reference and a journal reference correctly. Websites are often needed to be referenced for this course. Students like to use websites a lot for their research and to find their information, particular information specific to your lessons. So here's how to accurately reference a website. Sometimes you need to include the author's name. Sometimes that's not available. The date is particularly important though, when it was actually put on the internet. And if there is no date, you need to state that, no date in the bracket. Also, we have a bit of an example here about using the address and just pasting it into the reference list. That means that if I'm marking your paper, I can click on that directly and it'll take me straight to the reference that you have used to answer the question. And that's quite important when we're checking on perhaps some information that we're not quite sure of where you would have found it. We'll go and check your source. Here's also how to reference a journal. E-books and e-journals you may not have to use as much of, but you might use e-books actually quite a bit for this course. So here's how to reference those. So once you've referenced throughout your paper, you also have to include a bibliography or reference list at the end. If you've referred to other books and documents that you haven't used to answer your questions, but you still have referred to them in order to understand the content, then you can include those at the end in a bibliography list. You can see some more information there about how to arrange that reference list at the end that you can read in your own time. And a bit more information as well. Page numbers, whole citations. Let's move on now to the problem-based learning project. you're required to submit one of these projects on celiac disease for Nutrition 1. And a lot of the students read through the requirements on the assignment page and are completely confused about exactly what they need to do for this assignment. So we've simplified it a little bit here for you to understand what to do. So the project has two parts. The first part is the information that you research on celiac disease, and that's all to do with what's going on in the body, digestion, different foods and things that we'll get into in a minute. And then the second section is actually the problem-solving process that you need to discuss. We'll talk about that too in a little bit more detail coming up. You're allowed 8 hours to complete this assignment. Now, we're not going to be keeping track, making sure you get it all done in 8 hours, because that's just impossible from our end. But it's up to you to make sure that you keep a track of your research time and how long it's taking you to finish from the beginning to the end. If you go over that 8 hours, it usually means that you're putting too much effort and information into your final paper. 8 hours is enough. We don't really need a textbook to read at the end when we're marking your assignment. So stick to the 8 hours, and that should be enough to include all the information required. This project also asks you to use human resources as part of the project, and it helps us to assess how you work in a team. All your other assignments are just you looking up information, writing your answers, but this actually will help interact with the general public a little bit more and ask questions of other practitioners. So here's some examples here of people that you can use to gather information for the project. So we've got a person who actually has celiac disease, and that's quite a valuable resource. If you can find somebody who has the disease, they can tell you how it affects them personally, how it affects symptoms that they might experience, and perhaps some issues that they may have in food changes involved in having celiac disease. You could talk to a nutritionist or a naturopath or somebody in a health food shop who has people coming in asking about specific things to do with celiac disease and what they can and can't eat. You could talk to a medical practitioner as well, and they're an invaluable source to discuss how celiac disease is actually diagnosed in people. So how they go about, what tests are carried out in order to decipher whether the person has celiac disease or something with similar symptoms that isn't celiac disease. And of course, your tutor can be part of your team as well. So you can ask questions of your tutor. It's a good idea to have some sort of structure to your project before you ask the questions of your tutor, so that you have a bit of an idea about what to do next and where you're headed. You can send in a draft to your tutor to check to make sure you're including everything that you need to in your project. So you submit this one as a report that needs a title and subtitles within it, not as an essay that's just all words. You can actually use images as part of this assessment as well. And just a bit of a hint, a good image to include might be the villi of a person with celiac disease and the villi of a healthy person. So a good one to include. Here is a frequently asked question regarding the problem-based learning project. What are structures and pathways referring to? So it's basically looking at what's going on in the body. So why are they getting the symptoms that they're getting? And you'll need to be focusing here on the immune system and also on the digestive system. So there's two aspects that you need to discuss that are very important here. A note on food. Now, some students in the past have completely forgotten about the fact that food changes are required for a person with celiac disease, and they end up having to do sections of the project all over again. So make sure that in the nutrition section you discuss quite a few different things. One of those things is what are the main grains that are causing the issue that need to be excluded from the person's diet? And are there any other grains that aren't the main grains that contain gluten that should be avoided, that might be a bit more obscure? Grains like spelt is one that has lower levels of gluten in it, but it's still not suitable for a person with celiac disease. So have a look out for different ones like that. And are there any food additives or other products that are not food that need to be avoided? So you're probably wondering what I'm talking about here, but some food additives are actually made from wheat as the starting molecule. There are some products like wheat glucose syrup that doesn't have any, it's so highly processed, there's no actual gluten left in it. But you need to be aware of different things that are made from wheat that could contain gluten and are added to foods. Other things that are not food might include lipstick, for example. Some lipsticks, not so much anymore, but used to contain gluten in them, and people would be smothering them on and licking them off all day and ending up ingesting some gluten particles. So not a good thing. And have a look out for what the current ideas are regarding oats. Oats have been an issue in a lot of people for a very long time with celiac disease, but now you can get gluten-free oats. So just have a look at what is going on there and see if you can work it out. Which grains can we suggest that don't contain gluten? Well, there's so many out there that are important in a healthy gluten-free diet. And are there other foods that are popular replacements that are not considered grains? So you might be looking here as another hint for things like potato flour, which is dehydrated potato that's been pulverised. Is used as a replacement for wheat flour in certain things. So this one is a good one to consider as well as an alternative that's not actually a grain. When you're suggesting foods for a celiac, are the foods that you're suggesting still high fibre and nutrient dense? Do they still contain all the nutrients that are required in a general healthy diet? And are there any essential foods that you need to include so that the diet remains high fibre, nutrient dense? Now, our general Western diet may not contain enough fibre anyway, but a general healthy diet that most nutritionists recommend will contain a lot of fibre. So by swapping from a normal healthy diet to a gluten-free diet, we need to make sure that the person is still receiving enough fibre through their food and still receiving all the nutrients that would be in that normal healthy diet. So be aware that if you replace gluten with processed nutrient-poor food, just stuff that you get off the supermarket shelf that says gluten-free, it doesn't necessarily equate to a healthy program that's high in fibre. A lot of the products on the shelf are replacing foods out of a very poor Western diet. So not the way to head. You need to look at whole foods, so whole grains, high fibre, and maybe including some other things in that diet that have more fibre, like dried fruit or things like that. Make sure the nutrients too are high enough that it would be equal to a diet that contains gluten. Another point that you need to address is, are there any treatment advances in celiac disease so far? Is there anything that they're researching? There could be a vaccine, for instance, or any other treatment that is ingested, pills or anything like that, that they're trialling at the moment. You need to look into that and see what you can come up with. And don't forget, after you've finished all that research, you need to discuss the problem solving that you did in order to complete your project. So what were your strengths in completing the project? What would you do differently if you had to do it all over again? How would you approach the project? What order did you complete everything in? Would you change that next time? How did you go with your human resources? Was that difficult for you? Was it difficult to fit times in? Was it difficult to know what questions to ask? And, you know, questions such as this that you can include in your discussion. So there's lots of things that you can refer to here, and it might be an idea that as you go to make notes on things that you'd change or things that you were proud of yourself for. So also, when you hand in your problem-based learning project and it's marked, you'll get a mark for this one, either competent or not yet competent, and you'll receive an extensive marking sheet with comments from your tutor on the marking sheet. So contacting your tutor. If you have questions for your tutor, please put them in a separate email to your assignments that you're sending in, and they'll be answered much faster. So always in the subject line include question for Sharon, for example, and then it'll be directed quickly to me. There's a 3-day turnaround for questions. There's a 4 to 5 day turnaround for general assignments, but that's due to a lot of things that may hold us back there. As long as you've referenced well, as long as you've included the question on your paper and all that kind of thing, your assignment will be marked very quickly. Otherwise, it might take longer, so make sure you follow what you're required to do. And it can take up to a week for exams and problem-based learning projects to be marked, because they take a lot longer to go through and give feedback for. There's my references at the end there. You'll find more information on the Health Academy website under Nutrition 1, and all the best with your studies.